All right, the next thing that we want to do is we want to start looking at conditional statements and control flow. So a conditional statement is basically going to check whether or not something is true. And in here, we'll use those comparisons that we saw before to check these kinds of statements. If something is true, we'll take one action. If it's not, we'll do something else. And we can have many of these kind of checks. That's what the else if statement would be. So for example, maybe we have a question. Do you like Travis Scott? And we're going to save, this is an input function, which allows you to write a string and save that variable as input. So when I execute this, a little prompt will come up and say, ask me if I like to enter yes or no in a box, right? This says, do you like Travis Scott, yes or no? I'll say yes. Okay, and so now that variable, Travis Scott, is yes. And if we use, the idea here is like if somebody says yes, then we'll recommend some song from Travis Scott. If not, we'll recommend another argument or another artist. So if Travis Scott equals yes, because this is what, it's a string, and it's the string yes, then we will print, maybe you'll like Butterfly Effect from the Astroworld album. And otherwise, we'll say maybe you should listen to some Patsy Cline. Maybe you'll like Patsy Cline. All right. Now, because Travis, the answer here was yes, it will print that first statement, and that's it. But if I change my answer to no, now it prints the other statement. And the real, okay, so that's the big idea with a conditional. And, you know, we may have another condition in here, something like elif, we could make it more flexible and say maybe. Then we could print maybe listen to some Huey Lewis. Could be a good recommendation. All right. So that's conditionals. We're typically not going to use these by themselves, and we'll combine it with this idea of a loop. And what a loop is it allows us to iterate over any collection. So to look at the individual pieces of the collection. For example, we had this, and this is what it will look like. It will say for name. Now this is arbitrary. We can call this whatever we want, but it's up to us. So like this is typically the way that I'll do it. I'll save a collection with a plural, and then I'll call the singular. All right, so for name and names, print the name. Now if this is a collection, names, right? When I run that code, what I see is it goes through once and it prints Hennessy. Then it prints Odin, and then it prints Hardy. It steps through each of those members of the list. Okay, so you can loop over any collection like that. Now you can also just loop over it. There's a built-in function to create kind of a counter. It's this range function. So if we say for num in range 4, print num, we get the first 4 numbers, Python numbers, 0, 1, 2. Remember, we start counting at 0. All right. And really what we'll do typically is have some sort of list like this and want to loop over it and apply a test to each of those objects. For example, maybe we wanted to see whether or not it was Hennessy. If it's Hennessy, we're going to print Hennessy is here. If it's Odin, we're going to print Odin is here. And if it's somebody else, we're going to capitalize their name and say they're here. So when we do this, right, the first time through, it was Hennessy. The second time through, it was Odin. Third time, it was Hardy. All right, so each of those conditions were met at different times. Well, this is just a catch-all for anything that wasn't Hennessy and Odin. All right, but this is a really important kind of pattern where we loop over some sort of collection and apply a test to each individual member of that collection. For loops and conditionals.